So I've got Martin Lippert, who's also, I'm going to bring him on here. And then I'm going to say goodbye to you, Patricia.
Hey.
And it was a great call. But I'm scared now. All of these talks that I've had here, and I just have to go back and I'm going to, give myself a hug and say, okay, Kubernetes, XSS. But Martin's got a really nice talk on basic scripting tooling. You're not going to show me how to get hacked, right, Martin?
No hacking today.
Patricia's already kind of scared me with that. So thank you, Patricia. I'm going to hand it over to you, Martin, and I look forward to your talk on Spring Tools with Visual Studio Code.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I'm very happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me to talk to the audience and give a presentation about Spring Tools. So my name is Martin. I work for VMware. I work on the core Spring engineering team. And the stuff that I'm working on is tools for developers. So my team is doing all the Spring tools for Eclipse, the Spring tools for VS Code, and other tools. But what I really would like to achieve is to make you as a Spring Boot application developer more productive using the tools that you like and that you love. So that is why I'm standing up in the morning and thinking about and hacking on tooling to actually make you more productive. And in this session, I would like to show you what we did for Visual Studio Code to actually turn that into a real awesome environment to implement and hack on Spring Boot applications. Since talking about tools is not so much fun, I will jump to live demos and show live demos only. Hope that's okay with you. So let's go actually to VS Code. So I have a, let's say, more or less standard VS Code installation over here. But in order, if you want to implement or work on Java and Spring Boot applications, I would like to recommend to install a few extensions. So the first one, and this is probably the most important one, is you should really install the extension pack for Java. That's a well-curated set of additional extensions to make or to turn Visual Studio Code into a great environment to implement Java stuff in general, to debug and run Java applications, test Java applications, have additional support for Maven projects, look into project definitions, and we will see all that basically in action. So I have that installed already. If you want to implement Spring Boot applications, I would also like to really strongly recommend you to install the Spring Boot extension pack in addition to the Java extension pack. This comes with the standard Spring tools. That's the stuff that we work on. The Initializer integration, so kind of a start.spring.io within your VS Code environment. That's done by colleagues in Microsoft, and some other interesting stuff that I will not go into the depth today of the dashboard, because there's so much stuff that is going on behind the scenes to improve that this is probably a good demo for next time. So I have those things installed, and once I have those things installed in my VS Code, and I go to my get started thing, there is a little nice additional walkthrough showing up here, telling you a little bit about how to get started implementing and working with Spring Boot applications inside of VS Code. So you can look at that, get an idea about where to start and what to do. So usually, if you want to start hacking on Spring Boot applications, what do you do? Of course, you go to start.spring.io and you create a new Spring Boot project. You select something from the metadata, implement some or define some project metadata like the names and so on. And then you select the dependencies like, oh, let's walk through that, use the web dependency and so on. And then you maybe kind of explore what start.spring.io would generate for you. You can see what's there, you download, you unzip, and then you maybe import that into your IDE. But the good news is you can do all that directly from within Visual Studio Code. So in order to get started, you can either click this nice button on the walkthrough, but there is just, if you open up the command palette and type in Spring, you will see some Spring content showing up there. And one is the Spring Initializer actions. Among them, you can create a Spring Initializer project as a Maven project. You can also switch to a Gradle project, but I will do the Maven project. So let's get started with that. It prompts me for all the metadata that you would see on start.spring.io as well, and ask me for kind of the values and give me kind of quick picks for things that are available. And behind the scenes, this is all coming from start.spring.io. So whenever something new comes up at start.spring.io, you will see it in your VS Code automatically for you. So don't be worried. This is nothing separate. This is just a nice integration. So let me select this in Java, of course, and some the default names. Package as a jar. I select the Java version 11. And then you can browse through the dependencies and through the modules that you want to include. So for example, search for web and say, oh, let's use the web one. I also want to use the Spring Actuator one because that allows me nice additional features. So once I have those selected, I can just press enter and it will create the project. It asks me where to store the stuff. Let me select the Spring demo, generate this into this folder. And once that's done, it asks me whether you want to open a new VS Code instance to only look at this project, or if you want to add this to your existing workspace, if you are in an existing workspace, which I am, because I have a little additional demo project prepared for you. But let's continue on this generated one. So I add this to my workspace. It shows up over here in my file explorer. I can see the demo thing. And I can directly see it's all there, right? Ready to use, simple generated Spring Boot project. And as you can see over here is that, let me look at my notes. It is already importing this project as a Java project. So you can do all the Java coding inside of this. One thing, for example, is you can take a look at the outline. You see the regular outline of this class. Nothing really super fancy in here because it's such a small class. Some small things from the Spring tools you can see already shining through here. We will talk about those things in a moment. But I think more interestingly for a Java project is that the Java Project Explorer allows you to really walk you through all the elements, especially all your Maven dependencies, for example. So you can see all the resolved Maven dependencies. You can dive into those libraries. You can click on the class and see the source code. All the stuff that you're probably used to from other IDEs, you can do that in VS Code as well. You can look into the JRE, take a look at all those classes and stuff like that. So it's all well integrated, and it feels really like a real great Java environment. So let's do something. Let's hack a new controller because my generated project contains really no real functionality. So let's do a myController.java class, and it knows, oh, it's a Java class, so it already gave me the option to edit some code snippets in here, so I can work on that. Class is okay. Let me do a REST controller thing over here. So you see it already shows up contenances pretty quickly for the regular Java stuff. That's a REST controller. Yeah, REST controller is great. And once the tools recognize that this is a Spring REST controller, and I open Content Assist in here, it opens up additional snippets that are probably useful if you implement a REST controller. For example, you will most likely want to implement get mapping, post mapping, put mapping things. So let's do a get mapping. Adds you a little snippet in here that you can change. Let's say we do a hello thing, very simple one, and we return hello jdconf in here. So that's basically it. I already implemented my first Spring Boot application with the REST controller. You can see regular Java tooling kicking in, saying this import is no longer used. If I click on that, I get additional actions, for example, to organize my imports. So it's a Java well-aware environment that can do all this stuff. In addition to this pure Java tooling, you will see that the Spring tools behind the scenes already are looking at your source code and extracting additional Springy information out of them as so-called symbols. So in this case, it shows me that there's a bean that's being defined, and there's request mapping being defined. The request mapping is /greeting. So this becomes specifically handy if you want to get an overview about what is in your file from the Spring perspective. So if I open up the go to symbol and file dialog and press add, it kind of filters down the list to all the Springy elements in this source code, where I can see, oh, there's a bean definition. In this case, it's a REST controller, and it's a request mapping. Once we arrive at a more complex example, you will see a lot more of this, and I will show you a lot more of that stuff, which I think is really, really awesome. Okay, so we did our first kind of little REST controller. That was easy, that was quick. Let's try to run this. So I can just create a launch configuration for my little demo project. So it generates the basic launch config, figured out that my main class is over here. So I can just go in here, select this launch configuration for my demo application, and press run. As you will see, the regular Spring Boot application startup logging is going on here. You see it started up. That worked nicely. And I can go back to my source code, for example, and you'll see some additional information showing up that the Spring tools infer from the running application for you if you have the Spring Boot actuators on the class path of your project. So that is kind of a requirement for, not for the Spring tools in general, but if you want to extract additional information from the running application and show that in your source code, which I do in this case. And the nice thing about that is, if there's a request mapping that is live, that is available, it gives me this code lens, and I can just click on that. It jumps to my browser and opens exactly that request mapping, and I see hello JDConf. So that's awesome. Just a quick, nice way to help you navigate and try out those request mappings and see what is actually active. We will talk a little bit more about the other highlights in a second. Of course, I could also do something like debug. So if I do the same, it jumps on to this line, stops at the breakpoint. I can see what's going on here in my class and do all the stuff that I'm usually familiar with using source level debuggers for Java. So good stuff. Let me deselect that and continue with that. So that's running the application. Let us stop this Spring Boot application, which was basically kind of in a few minutes from nothing, having VS Code installed, install the extensions, create a Spring Boot application, hack a controller, run and debug the controller in just a few minutes, which I think is pretty good. It's pretty reasonable experience and provides you kind of a great step into an application. There is another thing, of course, that this generated Spring Boot application has. It has tests. In this case, there's a very simple test. And there's test support in VS Code for Java applications. So you can just run those tests with this little test run over here. And you see, oh, it's running the tests. A few tests have passed. And you can take a look at what happened. Everything is green. That looks good. So let me try to change that so you can see a little bit more fancy stuff. Probably a test that fails. You can see all the content assist stuff going on here. That looks fine. Let me rerun the test case again. And the cool thing is, once it ran the test and something failed, it shows me kind of embedded in my source code directly what happened. So you can see here, oh, expected true, actual was false at this line in this test case. So let me quickly kind of fix that again. You can directly change that. Let me rerun the test again, and you'll see, should run again. Yeah, perfect. Everything's green. That looks great. As you have seen, these code lenses that show up once the app is running can be quite handy, especially in the case where your app is not running on the default port. You don't want to go to the browser and type in localhost and then, oh, guess the port and things like that. So let us do something like this. Let us change, actually, the port of the application. How do you do that? Usually you go to the application.properties file, where you can define all the various properties of Spring Boot and beyond. And that's a huge set of properties. And usually I don't remember them all. So I need to walk through the documentation and look them up or try something out. But the Spring tools actually do that for you. So when you start typing, they give you content assist. They give you content assist for what are the defined properties that are available from Spring Boot. So let me, for example, do something like server.port. Shows me server.port is available. Oh, there are other things. You can see the strike through ones. They're supposed to deprecated. You should avoid using them. And if you continue to use one of those, you will get a nice warning saying this is deprecated. You should not do that. So let's switch to the port and type in something like hello, which is, of course, obviously not really a valid value. So the Spring tools provide you real content assist and validation for those property files. So when you hover over, you will see it is expecting an int. And if you hover over the key value, the key of the property, you will see actually a little bit of explanation about what this key is about. So it is about the server port. Default is 8080. So let me do something like 8081 here. Go back to my controller. Let us run the application again to see what's going on. Oh, there's some problem going on here. I maybe need to clean the cache. Let's restart and clean the cache and launch the thing again. Let's see if my lovely code lens appears, which I hope, with the changed port on this code lens. So it's resolving the launch config, starting up the debugger. At least I hope it will do something like this shortly. We'll run the Spring Boot application for me and shows up the new code lens with a different port, and I can jump to that. So just a nice validation of how useful those code lenses really are, because I really love them. I like them so much. So let's jump over to something a little bit more complicated, something like Pet Clinic. A cool thing about the Spring tools is that they look at your source code and they analyze your source code and they understand the source code from a Spring perspective. So you've seen this little kind of helper symbols on the file so that you can get an overview about the file. You can not only do that on a file base, you can also jump to the search for symbols in the whole workspace. So if I do that with kind of Command T here and press Add to filter that down to the Springy ones, I see all the Spring symbols from all the projects in my workspace. So for example, if I'm looking for something very Springy specific, like a Spring application, there must be something called Spring application as an annotation. I see, oh, it filters down and shows me those are the two beans that are defined with an application and with an annotation, Spring Boot application. And this is quite handy to actually jump around. So I can quickly jump to my Spring Boot application. And if I have multiple applications or multiple configurations, multiple controllers in my project, in my workspace, I can super easily and super quickly jump around them. So let us do that again. I would like to see something that is a controller. It shows me all the things that are that have a controller in the name, or the annotation or an annotation controller. And even if this would not be called my controller, it would recognize that the REST controller thing inherits from add controller. So for example, if I do an add configuration over here, it knows that certain beans like demo application and pet clinic application, those beans actually inherit the add configuration, or in this case, add Spring Boot configuration annotation. And that shows the stuff here for you up as well. So you can easily see, even if you don't use exactly this annotation on your class, but maybe a more specialized one, it will still show up here. So you can get a super nice overview about what are all my components, add component, even though maybe the class has an annotation called add controller on it and not add component. In addition to that, we also identify specific Spring elements, like all the bean definitions. What are all the bean definitions that I have? Also all the implicit ones via specific annotations. So you get an overview about the beans. And if you look, for example, let's say I look for something like a bean that had something with repository on it, I super easily get an overview about all my repository beans, or beans that are called repository in my workspace. Can also, for example, look for, is there maybe something like a data source? Oh no, data source is defined over here, at least not in this way. And the other cool thing is that with @/ you might have already seen it. It extracts all the request mappings from my application. So I see an overview about all the request mappings in my Spring Boot application, and I can easily jump to them. So in this case, I would like to go to the welcome one and see what is going on here at this request mapping for the welcome one. So let me start up my application again. Spring Pet Clinic one. Let's try this. It starts up. It also has actuators on the class path. So I would expect some additional information showing up here, for example, to jump to the home page to this request mapping directly, which is great. But you also see these green hovers over here. And they show additional information about these annotations and tell you what is going on with this annotation at runtime. So not from the source code perspective, but from the runtime perspective of the application. In this case, it shows me this request mapping, this get mapping annotation is actually available in this process when you hover over it under this URL. So this is great, right? The controller, if you hover over that, it shows me this bean is actually active. This bean exists at runtime in this process. Some other thing is there's an auto-white annotation over here. And this set is required false. It needs a welcome message provider, and this is not highlighted. So that means this auto-wired thing is not fulfilled at runtime. There is nothing being auto-wired in here, at least not yet. So why is that the case? Let's try to find out. Maybe we have something like a bean that we expect welcome provider, welcome message provider, something like that. Welcome message provider. Here's a welcome message properties thing. Here's a property-based welcome message provider. That looks interesting. Let's take a look. That's what I would expect to show up here, really. And it shows me the class. I can easily jump to that. And the add component annotation is not highlighted. That means this bean is not active at runtime. This is what we expected from the auto-white annotation. So it seems like something is missing here. And if I hover over this conditional annotation, I will get additional information saying, oh, this condition is not fulfilled. Why? The conditional on property did not find the property pet clinic as one message. This is the reason why. So let's go back, of course, to the resources and see what's going on in my properties. Why the hell is this property not there? Oh, I put that in comments. So let's save the file. You see under the hood, this updates the running Spring Boot application because we have Spring Boot DevTools on the pet clinic as well. And if I go back, it's still the same. Why? This live information needs to be refreshed. So the application started under the hood. Let's refresh that. So we can go to the command palette and see this live information coming from from processes and being merged into the source code. You can actually take a look at that and see what's going on there via manage live Spring Boot processes. And there you can see there is a connection to the process called Pet Clinic, and you can disconnect from that. So forget about the live information, or you can refresh that. So let me refresh that information. And that grabs new live information from the app and displays that. And now we see this component is active. This is great. This component is active. This component is being injected into the welcome controller. So we see the wiring between those components that happen at runtime in Spring Boot when it creates the beans and wires them together. We see the result directly in the source code in the IDE here. So we see this component is injected into, this is what this arrow means, injected into the welcome controller. And another bean, the welcome message properties, is injected into this component via this private final field here. Well, maybe it's not the best way to do that. Field injection, not awesome. We should change that in the future here. But you can see this information, and you can see where stuff is coming from and where this is being injected into. And I can, of course, just navigate to that, and then I see, okay, this is being injected into here. And of course, you see here the other way around. The other bean is injected over here, and you see the auto wire is being highlighted and things like that. So you really get a good understanding about, or a better understanding, what happens at runtime with your Spring Boot application, and compared to what is in your source code. And we make it easier for you to bridge this gap between what's going on at runtime and what do I expect? Is it really the stuff that's going on there? And what's going on in my source code? How did I write the application, basically? And how does it all fit together easily? And this is really cool. The cool thing about that feature is also that you can connect to multiple running applications. So if you have multiple instances running locally, or for example, you have one application running locally, and you have the same application running deployed onto your cloud or whatever, you could do something like connect to both. And it would tell you, for example, here, okay, this thing exists locally in this process, but it does not exist in the other process. So you can also compare two different running Spring Boot applications in terms of, or two running instances of this application. How do they behave, and why do they behave differently, maybe, when they run in different environments, which I think is really, really useful. Okay, so this kind of is a super quick walkthrough, some of the features of these Spring tools in VS Code, and I think demonstrated well that you can do real serious Spring Boot application development using VS Code as a great IDE for hacking on Spring Boot applications. And with that, I would like to finally jump back to this slideshow and show you one more slide to just remember and give you a few resources, what you need to do. Remember, if you have VS Code installed, you should go to the Java extension pack and the Spring extension pack. Those are the two extension packs you should install, the Java extension pack and the Spring extension pack. And if you need help while running Spring tools, using Spring tools, whatever, I added a few URLs for you, so you can take a look at the user guide, file issues, you can ask questions on Stack Overflow with a certain tag, you can contact us on Twitter, of course. And with that, I would like to say thank you. Thanks for watching. Hope it was gave you some nice insights, and hope this helps you to be more productive today, or at least tomorrow and within the next weeks, hacking Spring Boot applications on Visual Studio Code. And with that, thanks from my side. You can reach me on Twitter or via email for additional questions. Also, feel free to go to the Spring Tools for Twitter account for questions or for updates and news, or file an issue if you find something or have an idea for an additional feature that you would like to see. With that, thanks a lot for watching, and hope you enjoyed the session and have fun at the rest of the JDConf. Thanks.
Brilliantly done, Martin. And there are 1.5 million active users on Visual Studio Code, and they all get access to that tool suite, and it's for free. They can start using it now. It's got a lot of features that you actually pay for in other IDEs, and it gives you, like you showed there, introspection to your beans, the ability to look at your Spring codes, to do Spring-based activation and introspection. Yeah, so it's great. I want to